It's almost like a sinful birth. The term fake news comes up. Someone like me thinks like, I know all about it. I've been in the fake news business all my life.
Recording in progress.
Oh shit, I thought it was off the record. Think about it. Great time. Think about it. You're trying to take the hurly-burly of the world, the massive complexity where you always have imperfect information, and then instantiate it in 600 words to fit a length. And then you're told it has to be 450 because like there has to be an image or something, right? Wham! Right? You can't do it. Like everything we do is a simulacrum of the real. It's always imperfect. Now maybe we've got an opportunity for something better, something smarter, something extraordinary at a scale we've never had before. The possibilities of AI and journalism should get our heart aflutter of how incredible and amazing it's going to be. We don't need employees anymore. We can get rid of them. It's going to be great. Luckily, we've got some extraordinary people on this panel to help untease this issue, to look at the pros and the cons of AI and journalism from the point of view of a working journalist, from the point of view of an academic, and from the point of view of someone who's been in media and thinking about integrity. What I'd like to do is, before I have them introduce themselves, and in a minute, just give the synopsis of your background, how you see the issue, I want to ask a question in which I need a one-word answer. Okay, I'll call in a random order. It's not too random, there's only 3 of these, so I shall get it. Okay, AI and journalism, generally positive or generally negative? Up, thumbs up or thumbs down? Felix, you first.
Depends.
Veena. Charlotte.
Generally positive.
Okay, Felix, leave. You are not allowed to be a fence-sitting academic today. No nuance. No nuance, no, well, I have to consider this, there's a lot of research. No. Take a stand.
Slightly positive.
Okay, I was so interested in slightly positive. I'm still, because that's 2 words, you can stay for a little longer.
Get an extra 5 minutes.
We started late. So you're here. You're in. You're in for a penny. You're in for a pound. All right. All of you guys are not free either. Let's see a show of hands. It's all on the record. Generally positive, generally negative. All of those who see, like, basically AI journalism negative, raise your hand. Okay, that's like 36.2% of you. Okay, all of you who are or basically it's positive. AI and journalism, raise your hand. So that's actually a little bit less. The rest of you are undecided. All right, fence sitting is fine. Nobody really knows. I'm undecided too, so it's totally unfair. Why don't we start with Veena and then go to right to left, left to right, introducing yourselves, and then just with a sentence of who you are and what you do and how you see the issue, and we're going to get into the debate, the conversation. But I am not your ally. I am your moderator, and my allegiance is to the audience and not to you. So we're going to have a lot of fun, but I'm going to probe you. Good luck.
Hi everyone, it's good to be here and thanks for joining us. My name is Veena McCoole. I lead communications and marketing at NewsGuard. We are an internet trust tool powered by journalists. It probably explains my slightly negative response given we focus mainly on misinformation. So I'm going to be the Debbie Downer of the panel today.
Every panel needs one. I'm Charlotte G. I'm news editor at MIT Technology Review. Hopefully all heard of us. If you haven't, please go and look us up. We cover tech, and I particularly cover AI and manage our AI reporters' AI coverage. So this is something I'm very interested in and see both from within AI, both from how we're using it as a newsroom, but also just the field of AI generally. So I'm a bit obsessed with it.
Hi, I'm Felix Simon. I'm a DPhil student at the Oxford Internet Institute, where I've been researching AI journalism and news since 2019. I sometimes like to joke I did it before it was cool. I'm quite glad I'm still doing it because it's a really exciting field. And yeah, I think on this one I'm kind of the resident fence sitter.
By the end, that may not be the case. You might be so shocked by how terrible things are going to be. You're like, no positive.
Is it?
We'll find out. I mean, is anyone in media? Is anyone a journalist here? Wow, there's several of you. Maybe you guys should get in front here. Who here is not a journalist but in media? Who would define it differently? Okay. Isn't it interesting that there's both, right? I won't bore you with some thoughts on that, but I think before we get started in terms of the implications, we should talk about the here and now, and also the potential for the future. But let's start with the here and now. What is happening in newsrooms with AI and journalism? Charlotte, since you're a practitioner and you mentioned it in your introduction, tell us what MIT Technology Review is doing, and then what you're not doing, why you're not doing it, and what you're seeing other people do.
We're not getting AI to write articles. We're not doing that. That's some of the places have done that, and it's really made them look very stupid.
Can you give an example?
Because AI makes things up.
Can you make an example of where things, like where a news organization used AI and did something wacky?
So I believe CNET used AI and it created an article that was just full of factual errors and I mean it just fell apart within like hours of publication. So yeah, we're not getting AI to write articles. We're not as a newsroom. We're not really formally using AI at all. But informally, journalists are using it to do things like come up with different headline ideas, or to like help condense a piece of information, something like that. So it's being used in a very small piecemeal way, but we're not formally adopting AI to do journalism as an organisation. It is helping us do things like transcribe, which every journalist will tell you is the most boring and annoying part of journalism. No one wants to do that. So far, mostly that's why I'm broadly positive. I think, okay, it's like an assistant that you can offload some boring tasks to. Cool.
Translation is so basic. I mean, that's like the pencil sharpener, not even a pencil.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have a policy? Have you, like the FT famously, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, came out with a policy on AI to its readers. Do you guys have a policy internally or externally?
No, we don't. We're a newsroom of 25 people. We're small, so we kind of don't really need one. Not yet. That might change in future. I don't know, but at the moment, it would be kind of overkill for us to have a policy, I think.
Did the management, did like the news leaders encourage use and experimentation, or say thou shalt not?
No, they don't care.
Okay.
People are welcome to do what they want, but they're neither going to say you must or you must not use AI. It's down to the discretion of the individual journalist and what they find helpful. And I think that having that flexible, open approach is the right one at the moment. If we discovered that, for us, accuracy is the most important thing. So if something was inaccurate, whether it's AI generated or not, is kind of almost like not really the point.
So when you look left and right at your peers in media, there is other people that will talk to on the panel. Veena, Felix, don't worry, we're coming to you. When you look left and right in media, what do you see other newsrooms doing?
Well, I mean, like I said before, there are places that have wholesale just given over certain things to AI. And there are some things that AI potentially could be...
Can you say who?
Well, there's CNET, like I said. There are other tech publications. I should probably have looked this up
I beg
before.
your pardon, but CNET probably then retreated. They probably don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I believe, although I might be wrong, that Reuters has used AI to help do some of the breaking, like financial news, company stuff. I mean, that's boring. Journalists don't. It's like that. I started writing like 3-sentence stories. That's how I started out. Just like this company's reported this in its financial results. That's not that interesting. Most journalists would rather be working on the news, the feature, like something other than this kind of drudgery, basically. Maybe AI can replace that wholesale.
Did you ever make? Let me go with this a little bit. Did you ever make a mistake when you were writing? Where were you when you were writing those 3-line flashes?
I was working for an organisation that was like a subcontractor to Reuters and Bloomberg.
Great. Did you ever make a mistake?
Did I ever make a mistake?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't
What
remember.
happened when you did?
I actually don't remember I don't think I ever made any mistakes.
So I think all the practicing journalists are probably nodding their head and everyone else is mystified. Basically, you write these 3-line flashes when you start because you're 25 and you think you know everything and you expect to be a Pulitzer Prize-winning author the next year. And then you make a mistake, and then you go to the hospital because the editor's boot is in your thumb and it's surgically removed. And guess what? You never make that same mistake again.
Yes.
You make better at different mistakes.
Yes, I mean, God, I made so many mistakes at subsequent places. There's actually Sam in the audience had the same editor as me. That guy, if you made a mistake, like, yeah, you would know about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So in some ways, we don't hallucinate. We feel it on the backside when we do.
Yes, we learn from experience.
Okay, Veena, what's happened? Before we get deep into the misinformation and trustworthy information, what's actually happening? Who are using tools and what tools are they using?
So the impact we're seeing of AI on the journalism industry, and again, I'm going to focus on NewsGuard's research, which is very much about what happens when these tools fall into the hands of bad actors and the implications of that on the journalism industry. Those of you who are familiar with advertising may be familiar with the term made for advertising sites, which are essentially websites that function as low quality content farms to siphon advertising revenue from this extremely opaque world of programmatic, automatically placed advertising. And that directly threatens quality newsrooms, which require advertising revenue to flourish and conduct the expensive, important investigations that they do. And so this new type of made for advertising site now is what we call a UAIN, so unreliable AI generated news site. So before, it took someone creating these shells of websites, uploading bogus content, connecting the pipes to the programmatic advertising industry and collecting this ad revenue. And now because of AI, that system can be turbocharged and happen in a matter of seconds. We've to date manually identified more than 500 of these now. No doubt there are many more because we, like many other newsrooms, are just using cursory approaches to identify what these may look like. So, for instance, one of the UAINs we found had the words "as an AI large language model, comma, something, something, something" in the headline. Like there's no editorial oversight happening here, so it's extremely egregious. What we're not catching is the dozens of sites that may have one or two people, doing a Control F and taking that part out, so it slaps you in the face less obviously. So the scale of the problem is really just being estimated right now, and as things become more advanced, someone yesterday described AI currently, or LLMs currently, as the Pac-Man stage of technology. No doubt this will become even more hard to identify and even more insidious when it comes to robbing newsrooms of the revenue they so need.
Can I ask a crazy question? Well, of course I can. I'm the moderator. So these 500 sites that you've identified that are just churning out content, are you scraping it? Are you collecting all that content?
So we evaluate a UAIN based on 4 criteria. If it looks like the majority of the content is produced by AI, if there's no apparent editorial oversight, if they are designed to look something like news websites and therefore be actually potentially misleading to people, and others.
Where I'm headed with this is if you could scrape all their content for sites that you have a real reasonable, like 90%, 95%, certainty that this is probably an LLM generated content. Scrape all of their site, and then you have the world's best training data of what AI generated journalism is, and then you could run that model. You could create a model off that, and then look at Fortune and Forbes and the New York Times and the Economist, and you can find out if any of those, and MIT Tech Review, and if any of those organizations are actually using AI-generated text, and get maybe there's some sort of fingerprint that we're not aware of that the AI can spot.
Exactly, and there are some basic patterns, the obvious one being as an AI model, ... but there are also kind of the structural ways in which AI output is rationalizes and kind of structures information in an output, etc. What we have also found is about 37 sites that are actually now repackaging high-quality reporting from the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and so forth, and doing such a poor job of scrambling that they actually leave huge telltale sentences that we have literally seen copied from high-quality news sites. And of course, this is against copyright issues, and you can see how damaging this will be to the revenue models and the quality of the journalism that good newsrooms produce. And interestingly, we actually interviewed or spoke to someone from Grammarly. Some of you may be familiar with that tool. There's a Grammarly solution for educators and enterprise where they kind of help flesh out plagiarism in articles. And they even said, we are not at the place where we can identify what has been plagiarized from news sources on by AI. So the industry isn't really there yet.
Felix is taking notes. You're always the scholar. Okay.
Someone has to.
Thank God. So tell us, what do you see going on in the world?
Well, what exactly?
In AI, what tools are being used out there? Are people actually? How are newsrooms adopting AI? And then we're going to get to the implications of this.
I think I'd actually start with a different point. It's probably interesting to look beyond newsrooms. I mean, news organizations are not just editorial. You've got business, you've got the archive, you've got people running IT. And basically AI, just looking at what journalists do with it, yes, that's interesting, but it kind of ignores the entire infrastructure that's built around what journalists do and what enables them in their work, which is also affected by various forms of AI. That's not just large language models, it's actually stuff that has been happening at places like The Economist, Reuters, Financial Times, BBC is in the room as well, CBC. That's been happening for at least a decade. And a lot of that stuff is actually fairly boring. It's applications for machine learning to go through archives to find content more quickly. So a lot of it is really sort of not the fancy stuff people are talking about really, which is like, oh, we can use it to generate content and write articles, etc. It's just really like, okay, how do we make very boring processes somewhat more manageable for our people? That's for me the story of AI. And in some ways that's an evolution of existing approaches. And yes, we might have seen a bit of a step change, but it's not necessarily the big jump that people are sort of expecting.
So let's then leave the here and now and think about the future. What does the big jump look like? And I'm going to ask if people here in the audience. Sorry, I've got to.
Can you speak a little bit louder?
I have to speak louder. Seriously, me. Yeah, I can do that. Oh, trust me, no problem. Good morning, everyone. Thought it'd be a church. Okay. After party. So, leaving the here and now to the future. After I ask you, what is the potential for AI and journalism? I'm going to turn to the audience, and if you have ideas, either in terms of things that we're missing, because I think we've only scratched the surface in terms of how newsrooms are adopting AI, because I'd be interested to hear who's doing what and how it's working out. But then secondly, what the potential is. I've got a few thoughts myself, but I'll throw it into the mix after everyone else has had a chance to sort of put forward their views. Go for it. Where do you think this could end? And also, I mean, of course, it's so easy to find a dystopian answer to everything, right? Think about it positively. And I'm going to venture a little bit further still before you go, which is most journalism actually is pretty mediocre, right? But we can agree with that. Yep, we're all nodding. Yep, right? And the interesting thing about downloading all of Wikipedia and then regurgitating it back to you in a structured way, it's really good, right? It's really smart, right? It's probably better than what percentage? More than 50, maybe 75% of journalism, right? Depends on how you count journalism.
Depends
right?
on the counting.
Depends on how you count it, but some share, and some considerable share, right? So automatically, and also it's triggered by the user, not by the publisher. The person's decided he wants or she wants the article around this theme, these things that you never thought would merge together in this way, now have it. It's kind of interesting. So it seems like there's a huge potential if it's done right. What do you see as a positive scenario for AI and journalism in the future? Let's give it 20 years out, right? So I remember the year 2000, but no, easy to do.
Right.
Remember what mobile phones looked like in the year 2000, around 9/11, and then what they are today. Nokia flip phones, smartphone, right?
Yeah.
250 gigabits. So it's going to be the same thing, but very, very different.
Okay, I'll give it a try, and maybe I call out Laura Ellis, who's in the room, actually works on this for BBC. Let's break it up into two sides. Let's look at production and distribution. And for production, I think in many ways, it's something that's being tried and has never quite worked so far, but it's a kind of modular journalism, for instance, where you basically take all the information you have as an organization that's in the archive, stuff that's coming in, and you tag it really well, you process it really well with help of machine learning, and then you and me get articles written for them or content produced for them, which sort of work like cues closer to our interests. It doesn't necessarily mean personalization in a political way, but more like if you are interested in topic X and you want more information, then you will get a slightly different article than, for instance, me, because I already know that stuff. And you can potentially ask for that through the chat interface. And that's something I can really see, not necessarily 20 years down the line, but could potentially work in 5, 10 years, maybe even sooner, depending on how hard someone works on that. So that's one example for the production side. Distribution, that's already happening in some ways. I mean, stuff like accessibility, and I think there's actually a lot more low-hanging fruits we could pick. Like if you're sort of visually impaired, these days, there are some news organizations where you can actually have the stuff read to you. The thing is, even that, I mean, yes, that's technologically completely feasible, but it's in such early stages, and actually I'm kind of surprised that not more organizations do it, because it's not really hard to do that. And I think in many ways, the story in both cases is the same. It's a more tailored approach to doing journalism in better service of the audience. That's my sort of quick take. If that happens in 5 or 10 years, who knows?
But do people want that? Like, do we want that? Like, is that interesting to people to just have a mirror that reflects what they want back to them all the time? Like, is AI generated content really that good? Like, is the quality there? I don't know. But then I would say that. So,
No, fair enough.
but yeah.
Oh, let's hear Laura on it.
You've got to speak with Mike, because there's a live stream.
Yes.
I'm really loud anyway.
You're not as loud. You think you're loud. You're not as loud as you need to be.
As you learned.
Exactly right. So, opposite.
Oh, thank you, that's cute. Thank you. So I did put my hand up for negative, just to be disputatious early on, just to frighten you all. But I think, I wonder whether, for me, this area is all about partnership, and I wonder whether long term, let's look at the most exciting thing. You know, in 10 years, are we going to see us using Gen AI as some kind of exoskeleton to support people in society to do whatever they want to do? So we know it helps people who've got, you know, various neurodiversity issues to write things they couldn't. And we were talking yesterday a lot about people creating things they couldn't before, because, you know, you've got these tools that are out with the human. So if we were able to do that as journalist organisations, to help people to kind of wrap themselves around with, you know, Gen AI advocacy, you know, writing letters to help you get your kid into school when they haven't got in, that sort of stuff. If we could make that reliable, however, the reason I put my hand up and said negative is because we've got to get rid of these hallucinations, if that's even possible, because right now I'm not going to trust it to do anything. I don't want it doing anything in my newsroom other than stuff that humans are really, really carefully watching. Mm-hmm. It's like a toddler, and it's going to run amok. So I want it, you know, to be doing all those lovely things that you described. You know, there's kind of like headlines and then Felix, I want that kind of like, I want the chatbot eventually. I want the kind of like writing 17 different versions of a story for different audiences, but I don't want it doing it right now, because it really, frankly, scares me. And I think we've got enough disinformation going on in the world without
adding to it. We don't know if hallucination is ever going to be fixed.
We don't.
We don't know.
We don't.
Yeah.
And that's why we need, Felix, back to you, brilliant researchers and academics who can tell us whether that's ever possible. Because this was just like pushed out there without us ever being aware. It's a bit like nuclear waste, isn't it? Where are we going to dump it? We don't know. Let's just stick it out anyway. So I kind of worry. I'm in a worrying mood today. I was in a positive mood yesterday. And you're going to cheer me up and tell me that it's all going to be okay.
You won't have to worry about it, because you won't have a job. But I won't either, so you and I will be drinking at the church. Okay. Positive. Veena, I'm putting you in a...
Yeah, this
this
is a tough one. Something positive that I think could happen here is if the labeling systems and the transparency, and again, yesterday we learned not to confuse transparency for trust, but the transparency systems around what is surfaced in these AI chatbots becomes the industry standard. So NewsGuard is a long-standing partnership with Microsoft, and actually if you type into Bing Chat, Russia's war in Ukraine, and it gives you a couple paragraphs, what it'll actually say is, you know, different pieces of information annotated with the news links that information has been derived from with the NewsGuard score. So you can, as you go, decide, okay, that's highly rated, I seem to agree with that, or this doesn't meet actually my standards for what I would trust or regularly consume in the news. And then it goes on to say, by the way, this is the stuff that RT and Sputnik are saying, but here's two lines in the context of what RT and Sputnik actually are, according to NewsGuard, and there you can make your own decisions about what you choose to believe or not. So that type of aggregation, and I agree with you, Charlotte, like the Bloomberg and Reuters automation, Alliance News automation from when something crosses the wire at 7 a.m. and it's financial results, like that's a number, it can be regurgitated, like that's not the issue. The issue here is that AI cannot and will never be able to do what journalists do, which is call for comment. And you can have the best aggregation of this is what publications on the left or on the right or what different people are saying. What you're never going to be able to do is have a chatbot go actually speak to someone, integrate that perspective and that original reporting into your work to form what then becomes, hopefully, high-quality journalism that people can rely on and depend on. So absolutely, it's an input, but the act of journalism is the act of reporting on novelty and detailing and capturing the now for others to understand, and doing so through original reporting.
Nah. No. So what I mean by that is, of course, my heart swells. Right? I love it. I make my living doing just that: care, values, virtue. And leave the office every day and walk into an embankment station, and therein you see a free newspaper. Might be the Standard, might be Metro if that was still around. And it's also strewn on the floors of the subway, so you can always find one if you want one. Just lift your leg for a moment. Sorry. And I don't know if people, I mean, some people really want to subscribe to New Yorker and get that sort of humane, soul craft strewn journalism. But a lot of people just want to know, how that person was beheaded, in Stockton, and then moving on with their lives. And so it would be interesting to think, we could probably do the chart right now ourselves of the amount of news that is AI generated in the information common of what we would call news. So if it's November, the 1st of November, 2022, it's 0. It's probably almost no LLM written text. And since then, it's been going up. And we don't know what that percentage is, but it's going up. And I don't actually see that going up changing. It's always going to be going up. Could be wrong, but I doubt it.
Why? Why would it always be going up? What's this inevitability?
Yeah, why is it inevitability?
Yeah.
I hate inevitability, so thank you for pressing it.
I'm moderating you back.
I'm not a Marxist. It's great. I love it. Yeah, I'm not a Marxist who thinks there's some sort of dialectic of history and that these are the forces and this is inevitable.
Yeah.
Totally opposed to that. But I do think processors are going that way and bandwidth is going that way, and so I see the same.
But what about when it runs out of data? What happens then? When we've trained it on all the data?
Well, it doesn't matter. You can still have the data frozen in the place in that you can still generate more. Here's why. I think the temptation for media executives is going to be so great to get a penny or a fraction of a penny, a fraction of a fraction of a penny, with content of some sort, probably the most salacious and the most surprising to get that, generate that click to get, or if it's click or however, it could be a future model. But media has always been, there's always been a salacious nature to media. What is it, Hearst? You supply the photos, I'll supply the war for the America's entry into the...
If it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds, it leads,
Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Coups and Earthquakes was the name of a book by Mort Rosenblum of the Associated Press in the 80s. Same thing, right? The whole idea is that it is the idea of having a dark newsroom, right? A zero employee of one, someone is going to have a $1 billion media company with one employee, right? Someone is going to do it. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be you? Right? How would you do that? I mean, it's a great intellectual challenge to think about. How would you create that scale and do it? It's going to be possible. It should be possible. But you're going to be ruining the information commons. There's this, if you go to the Bodleian Library around the corner, beautiful instantiations of knowledge in the artifact of the book. And we had something similar, which Ben Bradley, the American Washington Post, famous Washington Post editor, referred to as the first draft of history. Right? That's what journalism was. It was the first draft of history. And there was scholars would smirked at that and thought it was more of the first draft and sort of dismissed it. But there was a beauty in that too, just like there was a beauty at the Bodleian Library. And that now, even that now, is being pissed on, potentially, by this tool. You've grimaced.
Yeah, I kind of wonder because in many ways we're already there, right? I mean, the internet is not that shiny place with lots of beautiful, well-structured and factually correct data. I mean, for the last 20 years, really, ever sort of since the web started to exist, it was filling up with mischief, with people sort of having fun, with people playing jokes, creating misinformation, all that stuff that's already there.
But you also have people around the world who now read the New York Times and get qualities of information that was inaccessible to them in the past. And if you think about I mean, this would be one for the poll, but for the audience, for the room, I would argue that top-tier media has improved over the last 2 decades. Okay, so that's an interesting phenomenon. Now, of course, it's been in a sea of dross, but for those people who care about this, that layer of excellence, it's gotten better. Think about technology reporting and the information. Now you have to pay a lot of money for the information. It's like, what, almost $1,000 a year, right? It's the San Francisco sort of trade press, but it's almost like for the BCG consultant trade press, right? It's the news, actually it's interesting. The news was so bad in the long tail of generalized news, even at a place like the Wall Street Journal, that journalists from the Wall Street Journal left to create this private news organization that Silicon Valley VCs and others could get reliable information on. And it's great. And of course, there's a societal benefit because they've got newsletters that are free that give you can splice. You can get 20% of the article, 40% of the article. You can get just what you need to know. I don't pay the information, right? I used to. Don't subscribe anymore, don't need to. But I get I'm always opening up their emails and learning something and getting value from it. So in an AI, so in the internet, you could say that we've gotten this great value from it, even if we've also had these pathologies. Between the value and the pathologies of AI, that's the internet, so of the AI news, we can accept we're going to have a lot more of these pathologies. Do you think we're also going to have these values? So where things are going to get much better?
Yeah, I think so, but that comes from these institutions who create sort of trusted news in the first place. So if you stick to those principles, if you are committed to it in the case of public service media organizations which have guaranteed funding to some extent and can therefore afford that, and if you stick to it as a commercial news organization who still has to find a funding model, if they stick to values of producing good information and reaching people with that, and if they build trust with audiences, and I think that will continue to exist, and AI is not necessarily going to make a difference to that. But that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily even an AI question, it's kind of a question, what do we want? And can we get people to pay for it? And that's harder to answer in a very difficult economic environment for commercial organizations. For public service organizations, that's somewhat easier. Then again, they have to legitimize that they are worth the funding and that they will sort of continue to be relevant in the pluralistic audiences they serve. But ultimately, I think as long as you have institutions committed to that, that will continue. But you have to have the commitment.
It might become more valuable, actually.
That could be true.
I mean, I think a lot of newsrooms have much bigger problems than AI.
Yeah.
Like just making money. That is the thing. Who is going to pay us to do our jobs? People get furious at you for pay. And it's like, I've got a mortgage. I have to pay my bills. And that's the eternal question. And ideally, you attach yourself to a billionaire or a very rich institution, as MIT Tech Review benefits from. So ultimately, that is a much bigger concern, as you know, than AI right now, and possibly forever. AI might make us more useful. It might actually make us value that quality journalism higher. I don't know.
Well, you said sort of the value and pathology. I don't see AI as necessarily raising the quality of quality news outlets. You mentioned the few that you think are getting better. I don't think what sets them apart is their use of AI. I don't think AI is what's going to keep them in the lead. It's not their USP. What AI might do is lift up the bottom part of the menial tasks and the boring stuff and the processing that people would find tedious anyway. Is it going to break through barriers of journalism? Probably not. Is it going to make things a lot easier and let people sign off earlier because they can automate a boring part of their job? Maybe. But the pathologies are really hard to overlook. Part of NewsGuard's work documents provably false narratives that we find circulating online, and our journalists have been red teaming these AI chatbots. If you tell a chatbot to convince you of something in the tone of insert misinformation publisher, it will do so in a very, very convincing way. So what does that mean? People are no longer relying on a room of people furiously typing out these misinformation claims and strategically disseminating them across the internet. This is being done at a click of a button and very, very well. So as we know, these chatbots don't have a moral compass, and the harm that they can potentially inflict because they don't have the current infrastructure to actually mitigate misinformation is extremely dangerous and really hard to contend with as we discuss its role in journalism.
So we're at Oxford. It's a school, it's a university, and there's these pop quizzes every now and then, like when we were in high school. Not here, but they exist. So let me put you on the spot with a pop quiz, okay? If The Economist is not an AI is not an AI news organization. In 15 years, it will not exist. Discuss.
Why?
So that's a good answer. Veena is still thinking like, how could this be? I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, that's the point of an essay question, right? Maybe it's not. But I think there's a lot of huge potential. I think it's it reframes media from, look, I'm standing up, the sage on the stage, right? A professorial sort of way of all media in which there's a single publishing moment. We determine when it is. We tell you, the audience, the implicit message of media to the readership and the audience is shut up and listen, right? I'm going to tell you what I know, and your job is just to consume it and take it in. You might want to challenge it. We hope you want to pay for it, but that's the roles. And this reframes it. You could have the audience determining the contours of what they want. They can decide when they want it, as up to date as they get it.
But how do they know what they want? Did people know they wanted Watergate?
It's not. Well, no. True. Okay, true.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's not going to be for everything.
Yeah.
It's not going to be for everything. But like, where's Watergate? I don't have my copy of the Economist. Like, where's Watergate in here? Like, Watergate. Everyone talks about Watergate because like end of one, right?
Okay. Yeah. Maybe that's like reaching
no, but
for
the
a
point is that it's not. I think you'll always have the sumptuous New Yorker, 7-page article on sand, right?
AI could condense that for you because who has the time? Who has the time to read
But
those
that's just it.
articles?
But you're going to be so enriched for those 3 or 4 people who read it are going to be like, oh, New Yorker, I always subscribe. Okay, you can look it up, John McPhee. Go for it. It's a real thing, and it's as I think as you guys know, fact check this. It's not some pictures. It's like, wasn't it like 30 pages in 2 parts or something?
Yeah.
They're like history of sand. I don't know. And everyone talks about how sumptuous it is. I don't have the time to read it. I got a mortgage, man. I got kids. Okay, got to work. So it reframes the nature of audience and producer, I think in a very healthy way. So my vision, my beautiful dream would be someone goes to The Economist, reads an article, and then has a little box underneath it that says learn more. And you query it, and it goes through the troves of data of Economist articles in our style and also those sources in the model that were considered valid and good. It produces it that there's footnotes among each sentence of where that information comes from, so you can go to the original source. There's a disclaimer that says, hey, this could be prone to hallucinations. It's not been edited, but it's useful. And then you can play with it in the same way that you remember the news organization Courts used to allow this, a digital news organization a decade ago, would allow people to take data sets that they had in the system and could build their own charts with like its own chart builder. And it was a great little tool. It didn't really use that much because a lot of people aren't so numerate as to want to build their own charts. But I think a lot of people are a little bit more literate who would love to build their own news article.
But most people don't get to the end. Most people read the first 3 paragraphs at best. The headline, the first couple of sentences, done. Who's scrolling to the bottom?
So I will answer that. You guys have what, 65,000 subscribers now, right?
Oh, what? Overall?
Yeah.
I think it's more than that, but okay. I would have to.
Been a while since okay.
We have a decent.
But yeah, sure. Like, look, everyone knows the data. Basically, half the people who visit a web page are going to leave within the first 3 seconds. Okay, so that's gone. The share is going to be about maybe 5 to 10% of people who are going to get to the end. But for those 5 or 10%, we make all our money on them, right? And they share it with other people. And they're the most committed, and they go to our events. And I say at The Economist that after year 3 for a subscriber, when people will unsubscribe, it's when we hear from their estate lawyer.
Yeah.
Right? Because people we're part of that, right? They're part of their lives, right? It's like I've been in focus groups where I've spoken to people who have subscribed for over 50 years to The Economist. 70-year-olds who did it when they were in high school, or rather in college, right? Who are now, retired. So that form of commitment, so those people do exist. Let's open it up to questions, and not just questions, to observations and comments just as well. So I see one person here, one hand, a second hand there, a third hand there. A fourth hand there. Let's hear from a fifth there. Let's hear in that order those 5 comments or questions as succinct as possible, not like me, and then we're going to bring it to the panel, and then we're going to go back to you guys as well. So the first one is a gentleman in the front row.
Hi, everyone. Wayne Cleghorn from Privacy Solved. I have a question about categories. The way I see this is that I try to split the problem, I suppose, into 3 parts. It can be split into other parts. Data journalism, of which the Financial Times has done pioneering work. We're all data people here. We know how that's done. Then narrative journalism, which we've all been talking about, and let's split that into 2. Let's have reportage, and let's have investigations and spotlights and all of that. And then the third category, which we haven't touched on, which I'm quite surprised on, is citizenship journalism and advocacy. And I think if we split the debate into those categorizations, we can have, traffic lights, and you can ask that question about the Economist and the AI newsroom. So that's the way I'm thinking about it. So I suppose my question is that a useful way of analyzing it? And what is your response to that sort of categorization?
Okay, let's get some other comments. What was this? The second was the woman there and the person behind. So if you raise your hand again, in the white glass.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I think in this discussion, we are giving AI a lot of agency, and I think that this is really endemic of the hype cycle and not just journalism, but other industries in general. And this is, I guess, a comment. I'm sorry, I hate doing comments more than questions. But you said that you wanted to avoid discussions of inevitability, but I'd like to raise one that I think is legitimate and not just a fear-mongering thing. Writers won't stand for this. If there's copyright breaches, if there is lowered trust, if there's lower revenue and fewer subscribers, if they are not making enough money, and if they are then being pushed to do additional labor for less money, they're not going to stand for it. Actually, the Authors Guild has put out a statement about AI in journalism and articles, and they're already suing OpenAI because they are preemptively tired of this. And I think that to undervalue their work, especially as you said, they're early career journalists who only produced 3-sentence lines. I did that at Psychology Today for a bit. It's fine because it's on the path to career progression. What if the menial tasks are removed and the journalists are still not valued? What do we do with them?
Stand for it. So then what will they do?
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying, I think
what actions will they take?
They could strike. They could walk out.
But most newsrooms aren't even unionized.
Yeah.
I don't know. At least in my experience, most of them don't even have. Look at BuzzFeed tried to unionize and completely went under. There's no journalists have so little power.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. But I'm trying to visualize how that step takes place.
I say they can always try again.
Yeah.
I want to make sure other people have time to ask questions.
There's a gentleman right there, yes.
Okay. Thanks for that. Lots to think about. I think if we talk about journalism as a concept, I think people are always going to be wanting to do some version of that, and there's always going to be journalists to a point. I think if we look at news brands, which I think is some of what we've been talking about, in many ways, these institutions have already lost so much of their kind of cultural status, their power to big tech, for a lack of a better term. And if we're looking, I think, at this AI kind of future, it certainly feels to me from listening to things across the last couple of days that the value of these news brands is in their kind of as data sets, essentially, as archives. And I'm just wondering what you feel maybe the future is around that, whether it's partnership with AI companies, letting them scrape their information, letting them build kind of their own models for different newsrooms, but it's hard to see as I say, for me, where the value in news institutions lie, except in their archives, and that's kind of a grim future in many ways.
So just to comment on that quickly, I came across this concept called model collapse, which I wasn't really familiar with, but it's essentially the idea that models output, the quality of which goes down the more AI-generated content it consumes, and it's kind of this like cycle towards garbage. And therefore, there will always be a market for quality, novel, reliably sourced data to power the continuation of these models' only hope to be capturing, the now and integrating that original reporting into what happens next and what they generate next.
I think also just briefly on this one, like the value of news organizations is so much more than just basically being like organ donors to platform companies and startups, right? I mean, there's like we have a lot of long-standing empirical research on the question, and it basically shows that news organizations, in the best sense of the word, I mean, it doesn't include all of them, but for news organizations committed to trust, to quality, they have an important societal role to play, even in places where we don't have functioning democracy. It's about informing people to help them make better decisions about their lives, from everything to when should I complain to the council about the bins, to which party should I potentially vote for based on the information I have available. And I think that really needs to be said. I mean, there is value in news as an institution. We have the evidence to show that. At the same time, the trust issues and the sort of trouble journalism is in many countries as an industry. That doesn't necessarily come from platforms gaining more trust. If you look at surveys, actually a lot of people don't trust platforms for good reason. That basically comes from other reasons for decline in trust. That's political leaders attacking journalism, journalists and institutions because they don't like the coverage. It comes from precarious times when people are sort of feeling more uncertain about their place in the world and where everything is going. So again, I think we really should make the argument based on what we know, not just normatively, but also empirically, that there is more value in journalism as an industry than just basically being sort of a feeder to platforms and startups.
I agree with that in principle. I just worry about the direction it's going in for all those different reasons you've said, the decline of trust as this separate thing from AI, but that is creating this perfect storm, which AI can obviously feed off, is in a really good position to feed off. It does worry me that it will just end up in this organ donor kind of
Which I agree with you on. I mean, thanks for bringing it up. I think that's
which a lot of publishers have no choice but to do because they're so cash strapped.
Yeah.
That it's a new revenue stream.
The money is the thing, isn't it? Like, where's the money going to come from?
Yeah.
Because there's loads of money in tech. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you refer to the organ donor approach, you mean like that we give up our archive and therefore we're sort of giving up a part of our body to these web tech
you
companies?
can partner with a tech company.
You could partner with a tech company, give up your archive, and in theory, I suppose this tech company could make a large language model based on your archive, which would just produce articles in your house style forever.
Yeah, there's a long history of tech companies partnering with publishers, and basically publishers tend to get punched in the face.
For sure, yeah.
Like this has happened again and again. Like there are whole publications that went under because of pivoting to video, because that's what Facebook wanted. I mean, like you're doing a deal with the devil. Like they don't have your best interests at heart. These companies are not committed to quality journalism. They're committed to maximizing shareholder revenue.
The New York Times, when they digitized their archive, the company that did, I forgot the name of it. You can all Google it and find it. But the lovely thing is that they received, I guess, the microfilm of it, but the actual digitization, they handed off. They just said, well, they didn't care. Like this was in the 80s, before there was really the internet to speak of. So around the 90s, the internet came around, they realized they didn't actually own their own archive, and it was a very costly negotiation until they had to buy that company, which had the prized exclusive rights in perpetuity to use in digital format their own material. You had a question, is that right?
That's number 4.
You are 4. Yeah. Congratulations. Bingo! But you have to talk into the mic. Exactly.
Maurice Turner, TikTok. Observation with the question to follow. Just in about 2 decades, we went from a handful of people being able to capture their lives visually to now billions of people being able to capture their lives visually, which has turned them into storytellers of stories that were never told and are now shared globally. And so I'm thinking, is generative AI a similar opportunity to tell those stories in a textual way, or perhaps in a multimedia way, those stories that are happening every day, are news to the people they're happening to, but no one ever hears about it? And is that a potential way of turning around the business model where someone who doesn't have that ability to tell their story and to share it, are we going sort of backwards to blogs, but ones that can actually make money? And is there that potential to say, you know what, my voice isn't necessarily something that I'm comfortable sharing, but I would love for virtual Charlotte to be my storyteller and to also tell me all of the other stories, but in that Charlotte voice, that is the one that I want to hear it from.
Yeah, you know what, this is something a lot of tech companies are betting on at the moment, like these character AI, kind of like, oh, you want to chat to Mr. Beast for some reason. So there's this idea that like you will want to interact with an AI version of something. And I'm really interested in this, like Meta's betting on this, a lot of companies that are beginning to do this. But I'm like, is that how people want to spend their time? I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm old, like that's not, in tech terms anyway, I'm not the person that they're aiming this at. I don't know. Like, would you go for that? Like, would you be interested in interacting with people?
Can I build on that question and turn back to you, Maurice, and say you're now the fifth panelist? How would you save journalism if you could, from the point of view could potentially from the platform of TikTok, but in any other way? Is there an answer that you see rather than turn it into a question, turn it into a statement?
I'm not going to answer for TikTok. There are other people that can do that. And to kind of go back to your question, who would want to see that? Well, it sounds like the conversation from the 60s and the 70s where there were 4 TV stations. And it was unimaginable that you would have an entire package of hundreds of TV stations so specialized with so much crossover that it's unimaginable. And most people just sort of say, like, I give up. I don't know what to watch anymore because there were so many options. But we all have all these options. And there's someone who's watching the Sand channel because they are so engrossed with sand. I guess they're cooking channels, whatever you want, there is something there. So there's obviously some sort of a market for specializing. And so I think that, that could be one way to look, is to say, maybe it's just that $1 or $2 a month where someone can specialize. And because you have the global marketplace, there is someone who's there who's willing to hear that story. But I'm more thinking from the informational standpoint, necessarily entertainment standpoint, but like actual journalism. There are billions of stories that are happening every day. What qualifies as news? And in the newsroom, that decision is being made every day. What crosses the threshold of being both of significance to a certain number of people within the given audience that it will make a difference to tell this story? And ultimately that leads to this dilution of what is considered important. And the stories are left on the virtual cutting room floor, on the editing floor.
Well, Wayne's point about citizen journalism, which doesn't get considered possibly enough.
And I think to your point earlier, Ken, when you mentioned AI being the potential factor that transforms the relationship between journalists on a soapbox telling people what's important, I think that was done pre-AI. That's a social media thing. That was as soon as people started diversifying where they got their news and information, from their social media feeds, from Patreon creators, from whoever. To Maurice's question, citizen perspectives and videos and created content, who is responsible for drawing that line between consuming someone's perspective, which may be ill-informed, to what is actually journalism? That's traditionally been the role of newsrooms and editorial teams, but
who have not reflected the population in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
so there's been a lot of
There's some optimism here that we were out of time, but there's optimism, and I think the optimism is in the questions, right? Wayne should get together with Maurice, because we have advocacy journalism and citizen journalism in things like Substack, and we've got the world's best algorithm to feed you what you want that is tailored to your interest with TikTok. Together, we've got great journalism and great human beings doing the work of the news, and great algorithms and AI melded together. It's not man or machine, it's both. Doesn't that sound beautiful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuzzy feelings.
All that is left is for you to thank the panel for an extraordinary conversation. Thank you.